The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity Radio on YouTube and, of course, Twitter, Facebook, all the good digital platforms. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio, KFOR Sports, Twitter, and yes, KFOR Facebook. I'll even give a, now that I know how to operate Instagram, says the old guy that screams at the clouds. I'll even post on Instagram. It is Mark Kraynak. It is Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. And what a big week for Nebraska. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to all of you for checking in. Walter is first. He reminds us you're late. We are, but it is Saturday when there's no kickoff to approach up to. We get a little lax.
It's almost Christmas. I mean, come on, man. We're tired.
We'll work on that for 2024. Nick is in. Roger says hello. And we've kind of done this tradition, Mark, Monday through Friday, where we name our starting five, where we shout out, roll call the top five that make their way into the stream. Rick is checking in. Jonathan says good morning. Jonathan, good morning to you. Kraynak, you found your way. Either Santa showed up early with an electric razor, or you went and said, give me the Gambino cut, and you went and got the old straight edge razor. Elijah's got the glorious Magnum PI tribute.
Yeah,
I'm working on some stubble this morning, but you are all sorts of Colin Farrell tributing this morning.
Why are you saying Colin Farrell? Because I also have a wool cap on.
Well, you look like
why?
I have not ever in the almost 30 years we've been friends, I have not ever seen you without some sort of stubble or Eastern European look.
It's pretty rare. I decided to give it a shot just to see how it would go because I haven't done it in a while, and do it over the holidays, right? When you're not at work as much, and you can maybe grow it back a little bit. Now, when I shaved it all off, though, I did not know this, and I hope I don't offend anybody that's listening or watching today. But when I first did it, I decided to keep the soul patch for a hot minute, right, for about a day, and was quickly informed by a couple folks close to me, personally and professionally, that I looked like a D-bag because of it, right? And I was like, oh. So that's not good. They're like, no, it's not good. And I'm like, shit. So then that had to come off too, because that was the only thing that was hanging on for dear life, right? That was like my last little. It was like its last stand, my facial hair stand. But
you've been called and we gotta give a heads up here. Where'd it go? Where did it go? Jason checks in and says, "Well, Mark just wants to look slick since
Jason,
he called the flip.
Jason.
You have kept hope alive. You lit candles. Whatever else you did, you were on this. You thought that things would maybe be
on this. Describe.
You thought.
I just want to hear it out loud.
You thought things may become shaky between Georgia. Mm-hmm. You asked openly about the quarterback room. You asked openly about Carson Beck's future. Mm-hmm. You asked openly about NIL, not just Georgia, but NIL practices around college football. And Matt Rule has touched on the fact that, great, here's the offer, but is it truly what you do get if you transfer? I mean, is it too good to be true? In a lot of instances, it's not what the original deal was. It's the old Darth Vader, Lando Calrissian offer that just keeps getting altered. It sounds like, I don't know, junior's 2 years from college, and there's no shot in hell of NIL because he's a Schmidt athletically. So I just take others' word for it. But no, I mean, it is it has been a great week for Nebraska fans. It's been a great week for Nebraska football and Matt Rule.
It's been a great week for Mark Kraynak. We are going to amend his name here on the stream and get it updated.
Oh.
Mark,
certified football insider.
Certified by who? I don't even know.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Certified by Hail Varsity Radio.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. They've been on the air for a long time.
I love
reputation.
That. Traveling journalist, weekend journalist.
Yeah.
It's been a good class for Nebraska. But guys, the Raiola ripple's been very real with Dylan getting in, and really enjoyed Mitch Sherman's story from The Athletic, kind of the timeline of how this came to be. And Mitch checked in with a lot of former Nebraska players that, yes, were also teammates with Dom Raiola. So let's start off, though, with just what it means here and now for Nebraska, the impact. You got a marquee position. You got a marquee player. You also got Danny Kaelin, which is an awesome statement out there as well, from a competition standpoint of wanting to stick and stay in the class and keep in battle, right? And part of Mitch's story also had contact and communication with Coach Huffman from Bell West about how perception-wise, it's a great look to get Raiola, but it's a great look to keep Daniel Kaelin, an in-state kid, and you got two freshmen because Chubba hit the portal.
Well, and are we going to keep our eyes on Talia Tagovailoa in that situation? I kind of think we should.
Hold on, what?
I don't have any inside information here, but there's
a wish.
Nah, well, there's a talk out of Maryland. Have you seen that talk yet? That Coach Loxley in one of his recent radio shows or in recapping the class, something like that, pretty recently put out there that Tagovailoa, either could explore the draft or even consider transferring. I mean, he's sitting out he's not playing in the bowl game, if I'm not mistaken. And as part of that, the discussion that he had with Loxley sounds like he isn't coming back. The reason I'm putting that one out there.
Wow.
The reason I'm putting it out there. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything there, but pretty interesting that, there is the Hawaii connection.
Sure.
Right? Got the Raiolas. Dominic Raiola was just inducted into the Hawaii Football Hall of Fame or the equivalent of that a couple years ago.
Yep.
And Tua was, I believe, the featured speaker. So there is some sort of connection there. You also get Preston Tamua from Hawaii, offensive lineman that committed, one of Nebraska's top recruits that comes in. I'm just saying, don't rule it out. And if you think about everywhere that Talia played and the situation that he's in, I'm just saying it's not out of the realm, right? He came to Lincoln, he got to see it. I'm sure it was one of the better moments of his college career, right? Of coming into a place like that, getting a walk-off win, hitting that deep ball. And there's a chance now here's the one thing with Tagovailoa though, is it's not for sure that he would even be granted a 6th year. Because he played 5 games his true freshman year at Alabama. So just over that limit, but with COVID and everything else, there's a chance that he could get one. You talk about a perfect situation though, right? I mean, if there is that connection, he's obviously familiar with the Raiolas. If you're Dylan Raiola, you would probably understand that maybe you could wait a year for a guy like that. He could be the stabilizer bridge guy. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
I think the bridge thing sounds great to me, and I was all for it because I was all for a McCord option. I was all for a Chubba option to continue to groom and grow. I know Harburg's still here. I am for experience starting next year. I don't know that that's going to be real because this is the Rule plan of going with the youth movement and going with a quarterback that's going to take their lumps in year one, but the quarterback's good enough paired with an uber experienced offensive line, paired with a really good returning defense, guys that have foregone the NFL to come back. I mean, all these ingredients say good year for Nebraska next year if you take care of the football and get better or competent production turnover-wise out of your quarterback position, let alone a phenom at quarterback. And I think you can grow into that phenom part. You don't got to be all Big Ten first year if you're Raiola, or let's just say for argument's sake, Kalen. You're two young guys. But you do need to not throw interceptions and fumble the football. You need to execute basic football. Let's bring Brandon Vogel in.
And I want to add to this really fast with this conversation, just in terms of something I said on Thursday and something we talked about with Brandon on Thursday, was that aspect of how many guys across the country are experienced Power 5 starters, veteran guys, probably 1, maybe 2 years of experience left that you can have as a bridge guy that realistically want to come to a place like Nebraska with a head coach like Matt Rule, who has shown through multiple stops that he likes going with the youth movement. Do you really want to come in and compete with the number 1 quarterback in the country? A lot of times what these guys are looking for in the portal, last year of eligibility, a place where they know they're going to play and get film out there for the NFL or whatever their next stop is. Do you really want to come in and compete with a 5-star number 1 quarterback in the country at a place where the head coach has already shown himself to be comfortable going with the youth?
Get me paid, let me win, let me improve my stock. Those are your 3 doors for a portal quarterback. Vogues, good morning. Counter Read, counterread.com. Kraynak continues to get his crystal ball out and straight edge razor. And
never again.
He's clean shaven. We're giving him hell about it. And I love it. But he threw out little Tua as maybe a transfer candidate. We also had the Casey Thompson speculation here the last 7 to 10 days. So, and Jocko equals and echoes Elijah's point. It's just a tough deal to really get a quarterback in here that's got much experience because of the direction Rule wants to go. Vogues, your takeaway, your reaction to the name Talia that may be in the portal. I think he goes to the NFL.
Yeah, I would. I think that's probably the most likely scenario. That kind of goes to Elijah's point. Even if he doesn't go to the NFL, he's somebody who, not just has NFL aspirations, because a lot of guys have those, but probably has a shot. So if he does play another year in college, he is going to be that sort of guy that's like, I'm going someplace because I think it can help me get closer. That was sort of the thing that was interesting with Casey Thompson. Not that, he wouldn't love to play in the NFL. I'm guessing he would. But I also think he has like a real interest in coaching. And you'd almost be looking for somebody like that. I mean, Nebraska has a guy, different scenario completely, in Garrett McGuire, who's basically on a football team because he knew that's where I'm going. So I would agree. It's a pretty narrow window at this point for Nebraska to bring in somebody with that sort of experience. That said, another window, an even narrower one, will open after spring football. So see what happens with that. But it seems like, Rule on Wednesday was pretty clear, and I thought did a good job of talking through like, hey, this is a decision we made. We're gonna go with the guys we got, and then a couple of hours later, maybe your best, most experienced option jumps in the portal. So best laid plans, I guess. I'm assuming that wasn't a total shock to them, but who knows? So yeah, it's kind of where we're at. You look at Temple and Baylor, and both of those spots, Rule kind of went between 2 quarterbacks his first year, and then one guy kind of led him the rest of the way. It's the history here backs up what we heard, I guess, this week.
Brandon Vogel is with us from Counter Read, and Juan in the stream has a very good point where he says Rule didn't speak better about any other quarterback like he did of TT being Talia Tagovailoa from Maryland. And this is I just want to put this out there. This is 100% speculation. There is no there is nothing published about this anywhere. There is no inside information, despite what my certified title says below on my superimposition here. But it is interesting, Brandon, because it's one of those situations where if it was to happen, right? Kyle McCord was on campus. He didn't get offered according to rule because of the Raiola situation. That was with the idea that you're still going to have Chubba. Chubba now transfers out. So things change, right? Like, would Rule have said, yeah, we want to offer McCord too because we know Chubba's out? If he knew that information, who knew? Who knows? But if you are going to do something, if you're not going to turn it over to either Harburg, who would have to make some pretty significant improvement in the throwing game to secure that position, or Raiola, who's like 18, somebody like a Tagovailoa, it would take that, right? Wouldn't it take somebody like a Tagovailoa who's proven, who definitely only has 1 year, and would probably, if you're Raiola, you would sort of look up to and be like, that's actually a pretty good guy to learn from over the next year.
Yeah, I think so. And we'll see. Things kind of shuffled out with quarterbacks. There's a lot of good quarterbacks out there, but I think that experience piece of it is the big one. One of the quarterbacks that, there's a couple of pretty high profile guys out there, but I really liked guy DeQuan Finn, who'd been a starter at Toledo for 4 years. He was somebody who I was like, man, if I were Nebraska and I wanted that experience, I would look hard at this guy. He ended up going to Baylor. So we've seen a couple of the players they were initially interested in, and we'll see. Like things change rapidly in this era of college football. Like it felt like on Wednesday that Rule was kind of closing the book on that, but as we said, things changed almost immediately afterwards. So we'll see how things go. But I'm guessing for the spring, the guys you got on campus or going to be on campus in a couple of weeks is what you're going to go with, which will be pretty interesting.
Brandon Vogel with us here, a weekend edition of Hail Varsity as we get you geared up for the Christmas holiday. And Brandon, the news kind of yesterday, late Thursday, was Rico Dowdell from Oregon. He's going to be visiting Nebraska here in the new year. Do you think a guy like Rico, who has only had 1 year of college experience, but was a top recruit in the country in that 2022 cycle, does a guy like that, do you think, solve Nebraska's running back issues? And maybe issues isn't the right word to use in the running back room, but as I look at that room, there's not one guy that I think stands out as being the guy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And with two guys coming off injury, you hope everything goes according to plan, but yet you kind of never know. Like if Nebraska went into the next season with the 4 running backs we know they have now, like you don't feel terrible about it, but adding somebody to that room, we talked about it on the Thursday show. That's kind of running back would be maybe 3rd or 4th on my kind of like Christmas wish list if I were just picking players for Nebraska to fill out its roster with experience. And, there's not a ton of experience in this case with Rico, but the talent is certainly there. So if you could add somebody there, I think you add. And it's not the top of the list for me, but it would make, I think, everybody feel a little bit better about that. And that's kind of really what you're looking. Well, unless you're Colorado, I guess, or some other first-year coaching staffs. Arizona State was really heavy in the portal again. Like it's kind of what you're looking for is just a place to supplement if you could be in that spot.
And let's note here, complete brain fart moment on a Saturday morning. Dante Dowdell is clearly who I'm referring to, not Rico. I don't know why I went with the name Rico here on a Saturday morning, but it's one of those days.
So it's okay. Gee, you're good.
Let's just make sure we have upstanding professionalism here and make the correction when the correction is needed. Dante Dowdell is clearly who I was referring to.
Yeah. If there was a certified CFB insider on here, he would have called you out. But what do you do?
The if part. But, Vogues, what do you like about this Nebraska class? We know we've hit on Raiola. We know that Danny Kalen's in, but you've got a class that, depending on what service you fancy, is anywhere between 17 and 21.
Yeah, and depending on where you look, basically at 247, it was just a step behind USC. which is pretty good. The new reality of the Big Ten did kind of slap me in the face a little bit when you go to the conference ratings and see those four new Pac-12 teams in there. Oregon was, Ohio State's just kind of perennially the recruiting champ in the Big Ten. Michigan occasionally gets close. Penn State hangs around sometimes, but Oregon was like just second by a nose based on the rankings. So Nebraska, a class that ranks, say, 17, 19, somewhere around there, that's kind of the upper range, I think, of where they will typically be. They used to be, most years, good enough for fourth in the Big Ten. Now it's sixth. And, that's just kind of the reality of it. In terms of the makeup of a class, it's larger, which you'd expect than the first-year group, but very similar, I think. There were a couple of trends that I noted in the newsletter for Friday at Counter Read. Linemen remain really local, but also Nebraska is getting more of its skill position players, I think, locally than it at first seems. Now, they'll go out and get some guys. We saw 3 people from the city of Miami come over just on signing day. So you've got that.
Seen that before.
With this, another factoid that kind of surprised me when I tallied it up. Nebraska's previous staff signed 17 players from Florida. Not one of them finished their career at Nebraska, with Taman Lynham transferring to Pitt. He and Braxton Clark were the last 2 standing, and they both moved elsewhere over the past, in 2023. So neither here nor there, but locally, they're real serious about, I think, the linemen locally for the most part. Got one from Hawaii, added one, not as a scholarship technically from Las Vegas, but for the most part, Iowa, Colorado, Nebraska, that's where your linemen are coming from. And I do like, we haven't seen it, I think, play out yet. I think 2024 will be our first chance, but this was also similar to that 2023 class. Like, Rule, I think, is pretty serious about we're going to get guys that we think that have the traits that we want, and then we'll figure out where they're going to go. We saw a little bit of that in this 2022 season or 2023 season. I think we'll see more next year. And this class has, I don't know, off the top of my head, 7, 8, 9 of those guys that I think could just be good football players. Let's see where they best fit for us.
Yeah, a lot of DB types. They clearly value that. I believe on the scholarship distribution chart, you're going to have something like 24 scholarship DBs, which is nuts, which obviously those folks could move into a linebacker position. They could move into a receiver position, even running back, something like that. A couple of names that jump out outside of maybe the obvious. Of course, Raiola is the headliner. And, in state, you have Carter Nelson, who's huge, obviously. But a guy that really stood out just after watching film, being a certified CFB insider, offensive lineman expert. In terms of film, the one guy that jumped out to me is Preston Tamua from Hawaii. He's the top commit out of Hawaii. I was trying to remember, you hear the term, Brandon, like, oh, he has good bend on the offensive line, right? And that's just trying to say, hey, he's not stiff. They have good movement. Out of all the linemen that Nebraska's recruited in a long time, I truly cannot remember a guy that moved like him. Like Maciejczak from South Dakota was good on his feet, pretty quick, but Tamua really does have that bend. He looks like a natural pass blocker.
There it is.
Which you don't see a lot of, and he's kind of he's on that left tackle. That's the position he played in high school anyways, but he looks like a natural pass blocker, which Nebraska tends to not get. I'm curious if you have any comments on him in particular after looking at it, or is there call him under the radar, I guess maybe a player in the class that hasn't been talked about a ton that really stood out to you?
Yeah, Tuamua definitely jumps out. I think he's probably the player who, relative to his talent coming in, and I think this is part of just being an offensive lineman, also being 3,500 miles away from Lincoln, contributes to it. But, he doesn't get talked about in the same way as sort of some of the headliners in the group. Carter Nelson, Dylan Raiola does, but I think he is in that group. And offensive line film, of course, is always hard at the high school level. I mean, high school film is hard in general, but I would agree. I see some of the traits that you're seeing there, Mark. A guy that I'm really intrigued by, Roger Gradney, from a tiny town, an unincorporated town, technically is what he lists as his hometown, about an hour west of Houston. Don't know a ton about his story, just kind of looked at his film. Versatile guy. We don't even know exactly what Nebraska is, plans to do with him, but somebody like that really jumps out. And another guy who, of course, has a great story, but Quinn Clark, top player in Montana, super interesting. I thought, Rule saying yeah, I like what I see on film. Can we get him to camp? Because I don't know anything about Montana high school football. I don't know anything about Montana high school football either. I'm guessing it's probably not all that different from, Nebraska or other states that are, similarly small population, but 6'4" wide receiver, super intrigued to, and a Husker legacy, super intrigued to kind of see what he brings to the room when he arrives.
Brandon, as you look at that 2024 class here, I just want to hop in, Schmidt, and ask the question in the 2023 class. One of the kind of the benchmarks for success, I guess, as the 2023 season went on, was all the freshmen that ended up getting on the field as the season went on, whether it be due to injury or due to development. You saw a good crop of those 2023 guys make it on the field. Is that the same maybe benchmark for success you're using in 2024? Is it the same situation, or do you think it's less likely that guys are going to get on the field as freshmen because of things like where the defense was at last year, where the offense was at, the pieces that you're returning there? Is it different this year in that regard in terms of getting freshmen on the field?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit different. You'd kind of expect it to be a little less likely that you'd see as many freshmen because so many just played. Those guys are, instead of being red shirts, some of them still get to redshirt, of course, but they're basically a full year ahead instead of a half year ahead where they got to practice with the team, with some of these guys. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if this coaching staff makes it a point to get younger players in, and find ways to use them. And having the 4-game, you can play without a red shirt really helps with that. But I think just where college football is and where it's probably going to continue to go, we'll see if Nebraska can remain kind of outside the fray of the transfer portal a little bit. I think that's going to be harder in some years than others. But if you got guys and you've got a plan for them and a way to get them on the field, play them early. I just think the era of kind of stockpiling and letting players, develop if they're close. Some players just need a year. But if they're close, I think all of the upside for a coaching staff, not just at Nebraska, but anywhere, is to get those guys on the field because it's so easy to move and for things to change rapidly. That it's kind of it's hard to kind of save players in the way that it used to be.
Brandon, you just nailed it when it comes to that youth and piggybacking off of Elijah's question and comment. What I really liked is their plan, right? Here's what we think you do well. Here's what we've gotten you to be comfortable with doing. Go in there and go kill the quarterback, or if you're Lenhart, right, or Van Poppel, brother, get in there on 4th and 1. You're a big body. You're money in the weight room. But they've got these kids engaged. They're seeing progress, which is nice. Then there's their role. Here's what we can get help from you right now with. And the guys are ready. And then it just kind of continues to grow. So I think that's genius. I want to ask you about the mentality of Dylan Raiola. I know you haven't crawled between his ears. That said, and some of the comments from Dom or some former players on Dylan, what do you think about his his goal, his want to be the guy in part of a class with teammates that runs it back, that brings it back, that wants to make Nebraska great again, dare I say, and take that challenge on. I can, and it kind of comes down to his poem, right? I can be a cog in something that's great, no disrespect to that, or I can kind of be a guy that is recognized the rest of my life for the pivot point in Nebraska football, getting from, hey, they used to be cool, to now, all right, they're a contender again.
I mean, it's a big bet, and it takes, I think a brave and kind of bold personality to even be willing to make it, because let's face it, I think you're right. You could be a cog in something that's already great, or you can come and try and restore something that has, presumably some real meaning to him, just based on his family connections. So the degree of difficulty that he chose is pretty high, to be honest. And I think Nebraska's headed in the right direction. I really do. It's not like, if he'd made this choice 4, 5, 6 years ago, it would have been even a greater degree of difficulty. But so for now, it's hard. You want to see it on the field and all of that stuff. But from my perspective, he gets a ton of admiration from me, which is worth $0. But it's there of boy, there's not a lot of people out there that would choose this path, particularly when every potential path is probably open to you. So we'll see. I'll say, and the hearing him talk a little bit post signing day and about this decision, I was pretty impressed, because I was kind of a little bit, and I think maybe that, I don't want to characterize the question, maybe that's some of the nature of the question. It was maybe there's a little skepticism here with that. I certainly had a little bit of skepticism. Georgia made a ton of sense to me, if you're that level of player, and for him to choose something else,
that's good.
Hats off to him, and we'll see how it goes. It's certainly an intriguing move to make.
Could this be the new era of college football in the transfer portal, that it makes more sense for a high level recruit to go off and find a spot where he can get early playing time, as opposed to, as Dylan said, being the cog in a powerhouse machine where you're going to sit on the bench for a couple of seasons, people are going to forget about you, and then you get your chance. Does it make more sense for a guy like that to go get early playing time now in the new transfer portal era of college football?
Maybe. I think the availability of the portal also kind of makes this it complicates things a little bit, because will we see more players of that caliber make that kind of decision? Maybe, because there's always I tried that, didn't have the year one I wanted, so now I'm back on the market. And we've seen, it's crazy for these quarterbacks that are in the portal, just kind of the opportunities that are available to them. So there is that. It also makes me think of, kind of looking at players in FCS and G5 level. If you care about the future of college football, all of it, which I do, I'd be real concerned if I was a fan of a G5 program at this point, because it's they've never been viewed as equal, which drives me crazy all the time, like G5 and P5. And I know those designations are basically meaningless at this point. But now it's you get a good player, you identify somebody everybody else missed on, he comes in and does great. I don't know, he'll probably end up at the SEC or the Big Ten eventually, which I'm all for players having the ability to move around, but that piece of it gives me a little bit of trepidation just for college football broadly.
Vogues, tell us about Counter Read, how folks can get signed up, what you do, and also give him a follow on Twitter at Brandon L. Vogel, Brandon Vogel with Counter Read.
Yeah, it's twice weekly newsletter on Substack from myself and Aaron Sorensen. We set out back in August, and we've had a good fall. So thank you to everybody who's checked us out already. If you haven't, you can just visit counterread.com. Goal is to find two good stories a week. Like, there's always a ton of Husker news. There's tons of things happening. Grateful to come on shows like this where we can talk about things real time as they're going on. That said, we're trying to create something that, is worth stopping and sitting down and reading twice a week. We also do a couple of free stories. So you can go to Counter Read, sign up just for the free at the start if you want. Check out what we're doing. And give us a read. Give us a chance to kind of show you what we're up to. And hopefully people will like what they read.
Well, you and Aaron done an amazing
subscriber
job.
up in here. Yep.
Same. Love it. Love it.
Yep.
And Vogue's
some good options there too. You can do the monthly thing. You can do the annual thing. You save a little scratch if you do the annual thing. It's a good thing.
Big time. Vogue's, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your family, brother. Thanks for everything, and we'll be ready to bust through in 2024.
Thanks, guys. Have a great one. Happy holidays.
You too. Good to see
Thanks,
him.
Brandon. Too.
Without further ado, we bring on the Iron Horse. All right, we love you too, Sharpie. What's the lid you're rocking?
No, I can tell you. I can tell you. Right? Isn't that that's the Storm Chasers when they play as the what?
I think so. It's like the Conquistadors or something like that.
Ah, right. When they play as right, they do like once a year. So they play as the Runzas. One time they played as the Potholes, but this is their tribute to the Latino community.
Yes, it is.
Where they changed their name to. It's like the Cazadores, I think, something like that.
Right? Exactly. Good job. That sounded very Italian. To say something about a Mexican baseball team.
That was not Spanish whatsoever. It's very good.
What happened to your face?
Doing the pasta thing.
Exactly.
Well,
yeah.
It's a great question, Gary.
On Festivus Day, I think we should discuss.
We have aired those public grievances.
Now listen, that's not a nice way to start a conversation, Gary. We've been over table.
I think this is a great look for you.
But just coming out and just saying, it's not. I'm never doing it again. I tried it, right? I just wanted to see what it was like to not conceal, my beautiful mug anymore and just let it rip. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to cover that bad boy up a little more from now on. So, yeah, never again.
Well, it looks good. Mark Kraynak looks like Tommy DeVito's
It's
agent
a filter.
Right? Yes.
It's better than Tommy DeVito's agent.
I haven't seen Tommy DeVito's agent.
Oh,
that's pretty good.
I haven't seen Tommy DeVito's agent.
When you think of an Italian agent, Tommy DeVito's agent is playing the role very well.
Yes.
Is he? Yeah.
Sideline, dress code. Yeah,
he looks very much like an Italian man, but Italian men have to be heavier. Like Italian men that are skinny are like too sexy for me. Italian men need to have some girth.
Forget about it. All right.
How did we reach this point?
Yeah.
I don't know, but the Iron
We always
Horse.
do. Usually it takes
Gary
until about
Sharp's
40 minutes into the conversation. We reached it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, we got there.
That's pretty good.
Sharpie, let's reel it back in, man. Good week for you and coverage, and appreciate you spending time with us here this morning. And Dylan's in, and Nebraska fans are absolutely elated. The rest of the class looks pretty big time. And oh yeah, by the way, Matt Rule was great again in a presser. So you've got two worlds here that Nebraska fans are excited about: the future and spring football again, the juice and the bounce in the step of what this spring season and beyond could be. And then, oh, by the way, you have the off season where Nebraska perception-wise made a statement locally and nationally.
Yeah, you know what, for the first time, I truly believe this, Nebraska started to act like Nebraska. They've got a major brand that on the field has struggled, but it's still a good brand. And instead of making excuses or, lamenting about the fact they haven't been to a bowl game, they started to act like Nebraska. There's so many resources. There's so much of a fan base with passion. You can also now prove that you can produce a bag if need be. Nebraska was Nebraska. And I think Matt Rule realized that. And he said, you know what? We can do this with who we have here, who we already have on campus, and who we have that are out recruiting these guys. And it was good to see it. I mean, it was a really, really good day for Nebraska. We'll get to the quarterback room because I think there's two things you can make true at the same time. But I think Nebraska went out, and we're going to find out that the 23 season really was further ahead than they thought, which gave them an advantage to put together a late run in 24 because they were able to fill some needs. And they're also, I think I like about this class is I look at some guys that they brought in, and I think it's a good blending with guys that are on campus already. You know, it's not like you have to bring in a 29 guys in the 24 class and all of a sudden they have to start playing right away. I think they can blend them in. So it was a really good day for Nebraska. And you know, and Dylan Raiola gets all the attention, and he should. He's at the top of your class. But I thought Nebraska went with their needs and they stayed with their identity, which is let's build in and then work out. And if we're able to win battles to get positions of need, let's do it. And let's win those. And Nebraska had, I think what might be, guys, a typical recruiting period. They're aggressive. They win some battles. They get some high-level guys. They get some of their own guys. But they get guys that can play in the trenches. And Wednesday was a good day.
Gary Sharp is with us on the Hail Varsity Weekend Edition as we break down the 2024 recruiting class. Gary, there's been a lot of talk about, in this class in particular, I believe it's 6 legacy players, right? So Ken Clark's son, Neil Smith's son, Camden Cook walking on and on, Caleb Benning, of course. It's about 6 of those guys. But then you have Buford's little brother, and then you have Javen Wright already on the team. You have
Baron Miles is son's in the portal, but
yeah.
Dang it. By the way, my favorite all-time Husker. Like when you say favorite all-time Husker, I say Baron Miles.
Kenny Walker.
Shout out Kansas State 94 game.
You got Noonan, right, who was already hurt, or who was hurt this year.
That's already Bob Sledge's son, Sam.
Yeah.
Right? Does that matter?
Yes.
At a place like Nebraska?
Yes.
And if so, why?
Because, so this program is still learning how to win. And they have guys that have won in the program before, but do they know how to win when it's winning time? Does that all make sense?
Yes.
You know, we saw this past season. And you just got some legacy guys. I tweeted out I mentioned 5 of them. And their dads, while they were at Nebraska, combined had a 790 winning percentage. Winning matters. Knowing how to win, being around winners, I think is important. That's why I love picking up an offensive lineman from Bishop Gorman High School, which is a really good high school. They know how to win there. They've won for a long time. I like winners. I like programs that have won where when the kid steps on your campus, he's been around a winning culture. And it's not just, hey, I'm part of it. This is what it takes to win. So I think when you get legacy guys, that's important. I also think this, and I'm going to bring Riley Van Poppel into the conversation with his dad, Todd. You can't fool guys that have been here before. You can't fool guys that have been pros. They can see right through you. So it tells me that if dads of Huskers, because it's not easy to have Benning on the back of your jersey, Raiola on the back of your jersey, heck, even Camden Cook. I mean, we know how good his dad was. I could go on and on. And then let alone Ken Clark, who does not get enough run as one of the better running backs in the history of Nebraska football, the late Ken Clark, his son coming here. Man, that's not easy. That's not for everybody because they want to go somewhere else and create their own legacy. So the fact that they are choosing to come play where their dad did, I think is a huge benefit to Nebraska, but also it shows you what Matt Rule is doing. That Matt Rule isn't recruiting dad to say to kid, hey, run it back because I was there and had a great time. He's going straight to the kid. You know, you're finding out more about the story that we've kind of alluded to of how they recruited Dylan Raiola. Is they're recruiting the kid, not the dad who also played at Nebraska and had great success. So I think it's a great feather in the cap of Rule to show you kind of the culture and how they recruit and that people want to be a part of it. They don't want to run away from it.
It's Gary Sharp with us here at Weekend Edition, Hail Varsity. And Gary, another storyline from this 2024 class, not just the legacies, also that 500-mile radius. whenever you look at how well Nebraska did in that 500-mile radius and locking down the state's borders. Really, the only guys within states that got out are the Rezaks from up at West Side. And I want to get your thoughts on that kind of being the vision that Matt Rhule has laid out in previous press conferences, locking down the 500-mile radius, going and choosing guys to fill other spots across the country, but first and foremost, that 500-mile radius. Do you think Nebraska carried out the vision in that regard in the 2024 class?
Yeah, they had a great in-state class. I think Scott's staff kind of got in on this, but Rhule's staff is going to benefit greatly. Is we are in a huge upswing of really good football talent in the state of Nebraska. And it's not just Omaha. It's not just Lincoln. It is throughout the state. I want to say that including scholarships and preferred walk-ons, there were 28 Division I players, or FBS, players, out of the state of Nebraska of 1.9. And then there was a plethora of other players that were out there. So it's a no-brainer to stay in state and work your way out. And Nebraska, again, did a great job in state because they sell the vision, they build the relationship, and they're very aggressive. And they get on guys early. Just look at what they've already done for the 25 class with a commit. And, they've got a good leg in on Christian Jones in Omaha, at Omaha West Side. So it's a no-brainer to recruit 500 miles. But you can't just say, we're Nebraska, we're going to go out 500 miles and we're going to get our guys. You've got to work the plan. And the thing I like about this staff is they work the plan, they build relationships early, and then they continue to develop them and let them grow. The thing to keep in mind about the 500-mile radius is Kansas is better, Missouri is better. So you've got some competition south of here and in this area. And also, guys, let's be honest. This actually might be a benefit for Nebraska because it makes you work harder. There are a lot of schools around the country that are noticing how good the talent is in the state. And so they're not swayed by Nebraska of like, oh, man, we're not going to be able to take them out of there. No, let's go toe-to-toe with Nebraska. And I think that benefits Nebraska because it makes you work harder for the in-state kid if that's truly who you want. And this staff doesn't take for granted that, oh, your dad played here, you're 45 minutes from campus, you're going to come here. They're like, no, we're going to recruit you like you're a kid in Florida. And I think that resonates with local kids.
You nailed it. The after-the-fact afterthought of taking for granted the kid that's in Ainsworth, the kid that's at West Side, the kid that's at Lincoln Southeast, or a kid that's in Kearney, they don't do it. I mean, a lot of the guys aren't from here, so they only know one way of going and evaluating and attacking a recruit to try and get him here. Sharpie, you mentioned and were asked about the legacy part. You've got the 500-mile radius, which is big, but also for years, you've got Florida and Texas. Nebraska gets a total of 10 out of both, 5 Florida, 5 Texas. Thoughts on that? 2, nothing from California. Is that just kind of a one-off, or does it matter because Nebraska can go to Florida, can go to Texas, can go to Jersey? They've done that in 2023.
Yeah, you know what? I know all three of us, we've lamented about the fact of, okay, you got to go to these specific places. But let's be honest. I mean, this is all of us in our personal and professional life. We go where our strengths are. So if your strength is in Florida and Texas and New Jersey, why not go there if there are players to be had? And if it's reciprocal, I can't recruit Mark and Mark blows me off and say, hey, it has to be reciprocal. So Nebraska really doesn't have a staff that has strength in California. They can jump over California and go to Hawaii. They got a really good offensive lineman out of Hawaii. Yeah. I think he's going to be a player to watch as he moves along in his career. But they went to places that they have strengths and they have relationships, and they work those relationships, and they were able to finish on some guys and also keep some guys in the fold. So maybe it changes with California because Nebraska is going to play out on the West Coast a couple of times a year. But if that's not your strength, why waste resources out there? Go to places where you can get players. Now, the thing with Florida kids is you've got them here. Nebraska has been good in Florida, but they haven't been good in retaining Floridians. Now it's important that they get guys here and that they're comfortable in the program and there's a plan for them and they don't look over their shoulder and want to go home. Because I will tell you this, after covering recruiting in the state of Florida before I moved back to Nebraska, especially in Miami, where there are a lot of alums of other programs that are not Nebraska, there's always people in your ear. Hey, why aren't you playing? Are you happy? Boy, are you homesick? which is true. I mean, we found that out this week. Homesickness is still true on a college campus, even with a student athlete. So you get them here and you have a plan. And if you have a plan and they can, the student athlete can see the plan that it's coming to fruition, then man, you've got them locked. And you know what? That kid recruits another kid. You don't think Barney, if they come here with a plan and he has success and he enjoys his time here, Barney recruits the next Barney in South Florida, on and on and on. And then winning on signing day for Floridians is a huge deal, because I will tell you, Florida men can be a little wishy-washy. Their commitment isn't so well. You know, sometimes they like to look around, even if they're married, okay? So you can be a late influencer of Florida kids, and Nebraska was that.
Oh, my goodness. I love the commentary on the commitment level of Florida men. Florida man also does a lot of weird stuff, a lot of newsworthy things. We can
role model is Don Johnson. What do we want?
I mean, guys, let's just get right to it. It's it's a pineapple on the door.
It's one of those neighborhoods, Sharpie.
I lived at so my first house down there across the street.
Oh, jeez.
Really nice couple. And they were really nice to
everybody.
Us. Yeah, but you know what? It would seem like they would have these parties and we wouldn't get invited. So I thought they were drug dealers, because I was a very naive Nebraskan. And then I asked, and they're like, "Oh, no. They like parties of couples." And I looked and I was like, "Well, what's wrong with us?" And they're like, they just want to keep that relationship good. But yeah, they were swingers across the street.
Oh,
so it
were
is
nice people, though. They had great jobs, but you would have never known it.
The universal sign is the pineapple, right?
That's what I've been told.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not trying to.
Why did Schmidt just say something then look like towards his wife?
Well, I was looking to see if she had any pineapples on. She has crap everywhere.
Honey, what do you think I should do with this pineapple air freshener? Can we hang it on the door? Everybody's going to be off work over the next couple of weeks.
Why do you have a door hanger that's a freaking pineapple in the middle of December, sweetie? I mean,
Okay. Speaking of swingers, let's talk offensive line and maybe guys that can, swing from position to position. Maybe a transition there.
Look at that segue. Well played.
Yeah, but you brought up Tom Mua.
I want to go back to Gary's neighbors.
I think they sent me a Christmas card this year.
Clothed?
Yeah, and just two
by
people,
the pool.
2 people, 2 kids, and a dog.
I love that Freudian slip by Chris. I want to go back to Gary's neighbors. So
good for you, Schmitty.
Insinuating he's been there already. That's good.
I just parked the cars, dude. That's it.
Is that what they call it these days? Okay. So Tamua, the offensive lineman. I'm glad you brought him up. We talked about him with Brandon as well in terms of. I mean, you can't call him off the radar because he's a pretty highly rated guy. But hasn't been talked about as much, and he's out in Hawaii, so you just don't hear about him a lot.
Yeah, so that's why he's been not talked about much, is he's a long way from home. But you're right.
Yeah, but the traits that he exhibits looks a lot different than the typical lineman that Nebraska's brought in over the last decade in terms of bend, right? It's a flexible guy where it looks like he is actually probably a pass protection first guy, which I just can't think of. It seems like Nebraska's always ended up with the left tackle. Yeah. Versus recruited a left tackle. The traits he exhibits screams, no, actual left tackle, and that is his position. Is that sort of your take?
Yeah, and guys, if there's a couple of things through recruiting day, and Nebraska's still going to churn the roster. Running back aside, which it looks like they're going to try and address through the portal, and that would be a major pickup. But I still worry about the depth at tackle. You have some youngins that are there, and then kind of the quarterback room. But yes, think about this also, guys. How many Samoan or Hawaiian-based linemen has Nebraska recruited that did not pan out here?
0. It's Raiola. It's.
I mean, look at Frank Solich's staff. I mean, there was
Billy
Waldrop. I mean, there wasn't an abundance of guys. But guys usually from the island or Samoan background that were coming to Nebraska have fared pretty well.
The linemen have.
Yeah.
Tata would be the one guy that maybe didn't have a huge career.
He was a linebacker, but I'm saying on the lines.
Yeah, strictly on the lines where
I got you.
That was, again, he's going to be a nice player. I think of all the hubbub of the top end guys. And
There's one guy.
Yeah, I'll be curious when everybody rolls out their Super Six on players that kind of are off the radar that jump into your Super Six. Give him an extra look because he's at a position of need. But I also think there's some ferociousness to his game. And then you pair that with Bricks, which I think it's important that Bricks is on campus early because you're going to have to teach him how to pass pro. They didn't throw the ball very much in his high school career, which is fine. I mean, he can be a mauler, but you're going to have to teach him that. Again, I really like I like the variety of this recruiting class, but I'm glad we're talking about the offensive lineman because at the end of the day, your 5-star quarterback is great. You ain't doing much until your commitment to offensive linemen like the last 2 years until they start to pan out and work for you.
Hey, Gary, just real quick, guys. You remember I totally called the Raiola flip. That's obvious. I'm not trying to point attention to that again, but here I am. But here's another little based on nothing thing that we were talking about before you joined today, and Justin has just chimed in about it. But there is some talk that Talia Tagovailoa, according to Coach Loxley, he ain't coming back, right? He's sitting out the bowl game, could go into the NFL or could transfer for a single year. And so I'm putting out there the fact that there is that Hawaii connection, the fact that he would be just a one-year guy, the fact that he is talented enough, the fact that Raiola would probably look and be like, hey, he's from Hawaii, he's been there and done that, that's a good bridge guy. I'm saying there's a chance for Tagovailoa, but Justin is saying that's probably not going to happen because of his NFL draft situation, and it would lower his draft stock. So when I say out loud, did I say Tua or Talia? I meant Talia. Talia Tagovailoa. Chance at all, if he's on the market, transferring, chance at all that maybe he would consider Nebraska. Can we start that rumor now?
I would say no.
But it's not crazy, right? It's not a little crazy.
Well, it is kind of crazy.
Why is it kind of crazy? Why?
Why would he?
He's at Maryland. He's at well, 1 year situation.
Okay.
He's familiar with the Big Ten. Been here and seen the stadium, right? Here and understands.
Okay. I want to. Here's what should happen. First of all, I think two things are true about Nebraska's quarterback room. It's unreal that the University of Nebraska has two guys that competed in the Elite 11 this past offseason.
Yep.
Okay, Nebraska hasn't had a Nebraska Cornhusker start in the NFL since Bruce Matheson.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly, give me all the stuff you know about Bruce Matheson. I mean, we're in a state where
for the Bills, mid-'80s.
There's the Kelly Stoppers and the Marlon Briscoes. There aren't a lot of guys that have started in the NFL. But Nebraska has a quarterback room that has two Elite 11 participants. But it also has a quarterback room, guys, that I'm uncomfortable with because you are going to go into now spring, you could work your way through. But you have two true freshmen and another quarterback who everybody would like to become Taysom Hill. So I think both of those things can be true. I just think in this situation is if you're looking at Nebraska should go all in on Dylan Raiola, and now you start the process where he starts against UTEP. Wait, why? Really? No. Why do you poo-poo that? Maybe it wasn't a poo-poo. It was a grunt. There are so many freshmen around college football that as quarterbacks start. If you believe that Dylan Raiola is talented enough, why don't you start the process now? Don't wait. Nebraska Mike Grant was not a bum, okay? Mike Grant was playing pretty well, and then there was a week off before Missouri, and it seemed like the right time to go all in on Tommy Frazier. Now, he had played up to that point, but Mike Grant had been the guy. This is an entirely different scenario 30 years later. You got the guy here, go all in, design the offense. You believe that you're going to have a guy that can coach him up, and the other two guys that right now are in that room. I think you transition that against UTEP, you will start a true freshman at quarterback, and that kicks off an era. Why wait? He's good enough. Now get him to where he's good enough in college to start the process. I think you would just muddy the situation.
Well,
that means Raiola may not play much in your scenario, Mark, if you bring a guy like Talia here.
You don't use him, you lose him. Okay, and you lose the freshman phenom and pick a program. That's just the way of the world right now. I'm not getting my playing time. I'm better, and I'm out. That's what happened. That's why you see 400,000 quarterbacks in the portal, because at some point there's competition, or the quarterback coach or the OC or the coach goes with, in this quarterback's mind, the wrong option. Yep. They leave. And it's a revolving door, and no one ever sticks to develop. You got to go all in with the development.
So let me ask you guys this, and the stats are true out there about top 50 quarterbacks, how long they last on the campus that they started with. I mean, that's real. That's a trend that every quarterback that starts in college in 24, they're going to either be part of or they're going to change. But if you believe that the guy you just secured a commitment from is good enough, why hold him back? Why not start the process? And I think there's also another part of this, is he's going to be on your campus in the next month. So it's not like he's coming in June and he's playing catch up. You got a chance to work hand in hand with him when we roll around to winter conditioning and, of course, spring. And it has nothing to do with, man, you want to make sure that he plays so he doesn't leave. I'm more on he's talented. Let's get him on the field. Let's get at every other position we say, let's get the most talented guys out there. He's the most talented quarterback. Are we all in agreement here?
100%.
So
100%.
Why not get him on the field and let's see what's around him, and so everybody can get used to that. And also, let's start working on 24 day one instead of working on 24 while we're in the middle of the 24 season.
And
here's what concerns me.
Another point I want to add to this, Mark, and it's something I said back whenever we were just welcoming Brandon into the show. You have to think about what the guys in the portal want to have in their next stop. They either want to have a spot where they're going to be making more money, or a spot, preferably both, where they're going to be on the field getting film out there for a potential NFL career. That's the number one reason guys are transferring, is because they're not happy in their situation. They want to be on the field. I'd even include Casey Thompson in this because he's been the hot name of the week. It doesn't make much sense for anyone across the country to come into a spot where they have to compete with a generational talent at quarterback in Dylan Raiola, the number one quarterback in the country. It does not make sense for almost anybody to come into that situation. I think it's time to put the Nebraska is going to get a stopgap 1-year quarterback stuff. I think it's almost time to put that to bed. It doesn't make much sense, both from Nebraska's point of view or from any potential quarterback's point of view.
Listen,
and you guys know this. I mean, history tells us 2 guys are going to start next year. So a little bit to this conversation, but what Nebraska, in this situation where you have 2 true freshmen in your room and you have Harburg, is Nebraska almost needs a Easton Stick guy. And I say this from the standpoint of when Easton Stick was at Creighton Prep, the only really person on the staff that had interest in him was Vince Morrow. Vince Morrow wanted him to walk on because he's like, that guy will be great for our quarterback room, and you never know, he might start one day. Well, Morrow left to go to Kentucky, and the rest is history. Stick takes Urzendowski to North Dakota State, and they win championships. But that kind of a quarterback in this scenario, before you recruit your next quarterback in the 25 class, which they should not be swayed away from an Alex Mansky. Now, he might looking at Raiola, but you got to recruit a high school quarterback in 25, is you need a guy that is willing to come in, that has played a little bit in college, but maybe hasn't been a frontline starter, but has been a solid guy that is coming in here for the good of the team, okay, for the greater good, and that is to help guys that are in that room also get an opportunity to compete for the job, but not be a guy that's going to upend the room because he wants playing time and he wants money. You want a guy that loves college football, that you can sell, hey, this is the role we need you in, to be a mentor, but also you might be a guy that plays, and he's not a guy that's played a lot. If you can get that kind of in-between guy, I think would be really good. But you never know nowadays. Somebody may fall into Nebraska's laps that they don't expect, and then you say, oh, how can we turn that guy down? But right now I'm not super comfortable with the quarterback room. No. I may be more comfortable when they announce who is going to be, coaching that room. But I think you need a veteran who has been around the block a few times, like has experienced the college life, that can that can answer. Well, he's an elite level guy. If I'm him, I'm going to a place that I'm going to maybe play in the playoff. Heck, let's go to Oregon. That's where all portal quarterbacks go. And also, as Elijah referred to, is get to the NFL. So I think you start the process now. You got a guy, guys, they got a 5-star quarterback. This is the University of Nebraska. It's not like he's a 5-star guy and you're like, he's a 5-star guy that you think is in 8 months of college tutelage before they turn the scoreboard on, can be your guy. Start the process, but find a guy that can answer the questions of those 2 young freshmen in that room when the quarterback coach isn't standing in front of him, that can kind of lead him along, that brings him to his house for dinner on a weekend and says, hey, guys, man, this is how we do it. This is where I've been. This is how we win. All of those kind of things.
Here's what concerns me about starting that process with Raiola right now is last year, you needed the quarterback run game just to move the sticks. You had to have it, right? It wasn't an option. You had to have the quarterback run game. And if you take away the quarterback run game, my God, Nebraska's offense is even more dreadful than it was, right? So Raiola's not that guy, right? He's not a big running quarterback. He can, I guess, right? But that's not going to be his thing. And you're going to want to keep him protected. I just don't know that Nebraska has the offensive line and the firepower right now to where you can take that quarterback run game out. It's just difficult for me to imagine removing that element from Nebraska's offense and expecting them to have much success. And then are you setting up Raiola for a really tough year because they can't rely on just traditional ground game and they don't pass protect well enough to where he gets a lot of heat. I don't know. It feels like a year too early for him. But I don't know how many other options you have at the same time, right?
So let me ask you.
That's why I think you need that bridge guy. A bridge guy would be perfect.
You're hesitant because let's say 24 is choppy, that, man, you're going to set back his development. Am I hearing that correctly?
If not even put him in a little bit of danger. That's a guy that holds on to the ball till the very last second. And that's fine in high school in Buford, Georgia. Not so much in the Big Ten.
Okay, so
that worries me a little bit.
I think all of these are valid because we're looking at a high school kid that now has to make the jump to college. There's a reason why people that have watched him in person and on tape and have spent time with him while they've looked over film believe that he's different than quarterbacks that get a high star but don't ever live up to it.
Yeah.
You do have 8 months here to get him going. And also, I mean, a lot of this discussion, guys, about quarterbacks, running backs, Nebraska's staff in a month could look different. I mean, they could have a couple of new guys. They could have a couple of guys moved around. I mean, it's all in play here. So we don't know how the quarterback room will be managed. But here's the other thing is, don't you believe, though, and your concerns about the offensive line are valid, that year 2, everybody will make a jump?
Yeah. I'm pretty positive on that.
And if you have at least a semblance of consistent quarterback play, that will affect everybody else's job.
Sharpie, you look at the jump you anticipate you're going to have as an experienced offensive line as there is in the Big Ten. Do they get better, right? Can they be a safety net in protection? Can they run the football so it's not 50 pass attempts a game for a potentially
and can they run the football without the threat of the quarterback run?
Right. That's the mobility factor here with Raiola is to extend plays or scramble occasionally. That's the ask. It's not short side option. Okay, that's gone. I like, ideally, the quarterback you described. Is he out there? The guy that is good enough to start and go win you a ball game, but you know what, is okay to stand off stage left if he's not the guy. I don't know if that guy exists. Hey, Harburg is that guy, but can he jump his game? Okay. I don't know. I think that second year jump is real, and the flat out fact is if you get competent quarterback play, freshman, Band-Aid transfer, whatever, just don't turn the damn football over.
So I think,
and you're okay.
Nebraska wasn't going to have a major element of quarterback run game. And then they were forced to. You look at the last two games against Wisconsin and Iowa, they want that pocket passer. They don't always have to roll a guy out. So they want the Raiola type, great decision making. Here's another factor, guys. you're going to have a quarterback in Nebraska whose brain is better than a lot of the quarterback brains that we saw this past year. That goes a long way in quick thinking, okay? Getting the ball out, not having to think, do I throw it? Do I throw it? No, you see it and you throw it. So that's a factor in. But also, guys, here's why I love the fact that both of Nebraska's incoming quarterbacks are going to be here on campus for spring football. And you've got that offensive line that everything that Mark said and Schmidt just said and Elijah has said in the past about the offensive line and getting better year two, either with personnel changes or being better at your profession in certain areas. Don't you think, guys, that offense is going to have to be on point once they open up spring football? Because iron sharpens iron. That defense is coming to get you. That defense doesn't have to do any of teaching in the spring. That defense is out to play football in the spring. So if you're an offensive person, you realize that every day those guys know what the heck they're doing and they're bringing it. So you've got to be better on offense. So I think that will help into the factor here. But I think why, if Mark, you're still thinking about, man, we got to have that element of a quarterback run game, is that guy in the portal? No, if your offense is a pocket passer and to extend the field and throw it downfield and develop those wide receivers so they can take the next jump in being thrown open, I think you go ahead, you do it. I mean, Nebraska, this is not Nebraska. They got an elite quarterback, a 5-star. Let's see what they have, and let's see early, and let him grow with growing pains. It's not like he's coming into just a porous football program. They won 5. You could make a case they should have won a couple of more. So he's got a good starting point with that defense. And I say, light the match, let him go, and welcome to big-time college football on opening day. Let the hype surround him, but let him play football against UTEP and go from there.
Look, I'm not saying you need the quarterback run game for eternity. I'm saying for next year you might, just because of where the offensive line is. And you also think about, okay, the veteran guy in the quarterback room, you call him the veteran, is Harburg, who missed a whole year of development, who obviously struggles in the passing game, whose offense, like the offense you call around Harburg, way different than the one that you would call around Raiola too, right?
Yeah.
So that's just what worries me is you have 3 scholarship dudes. Yeah. Period. Like that's Nebraska used 3 guys last year.
Yeah, they won't unless they get a walk-on that has a pedigree. And I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know anything. I think they can't go into the year with just 3 football quarterbacks that are all underclassmen. I mean, they'll find somebody. So let me throw it out to the group here about the hesitancy of, man, you got to have that quarterback run game. Let's just for a moment here. What if Nebraska is better at quarterback handoff game? That they're better at running back. I mean, now you throw in the element where the quarterback run game is almost of a, oh my gosh, I can't believe he took off. And they don't do it 8 times a game. It's here or there, but because you're better at stretching the field, getting it to the flat, and turning around and handing it off to your running back, that makes the quarterback run game better. Not the person, but the philosophy.
You need the quarterback run game. You have the quarterback run game as an option because your I-back run game isn't what it needs to be, or your offensive line isn't what it needs to be. So it's a 1-2 punch. If you get better, like Sharpie said, it's your profession, or you find a dude at running back, or you let Emmett run, or whatever the hell the option is.
I like Emmett, by the way.
I do too. I like Emmett, get the kid from Oregon, and I think that's a nice 1-2 punch. No,
get Ramir back.
I love the quarterback run game. I love seeing that. We grew up with it at Nebraska. But if they're okay to live life on Saturdays without it, I'm fine with it. Because just get me 4 yards on first down if I'm a Nebraska fan, move the chains, protect the quarterback, be physical. I mean, it's kind of a short ask list for me if I'm a Nebraska football fan. Get me 24 points a game in Big Ten play, and don't suck in 2-minute situations, because you're going to be down to the wire if you're a Nebraska football team with this Big Ten schedule.
Well, and let's lay something out here really fast. It makes the job of the offensive line and the running back running game easier whenever you have a quarterback that can stretch the field in the way that Matt Rule wants to. He's talked about the explosive passing nature that he wants within his offense. Yep. If you have that and the defense can't load up 7-8 guys in the box every single play to stop your rushing attack, makes the job of the offensive line easier, makes the job of the running back easier, and it takes away, those two things, the quarterback run game or stretching the field via a vertical passing attack, can kind of accomplish the same thing that you're looking for in terms of making it easier for your running back rushing attack.
Well, and it's way more difficult to survive with that quarterback run game. You're having to develop a backup, which is good, but you need three a lot of times.
Let's be honest. Nebraska's had to have and I think when we say quarterback run game, we're all kind of thinking of RPOs, a little bit of option. Dillon is not a statue. Nebraska's had to rely more on the quarterback run game because they haven't had a quarterback that can just play pitch and catch.
No, you're right. You're right. This is all tempered by the fact that I think we saw it last year, and maybe it happens every year, but it was really pronounced this year where it looks like there were dudes wide open that the quarterbacks just flat out did not see, multiple times. And not just a little. That happens in every season, every team. But it seems like that was almost a characteristic of Nebraska's offense. Where it's how did you miss the guy that was 10 yards open?
You're right. And I've said this, and Schmidt and I have sat next to each other upstairs. It is kind of frightening when you see a play design and there are wide receivers that are 15 yards down the field that have run a really good route and it's designed well and they ran the route as it was and they're open and there's really no chance that the quarterback's going to see them because either they've got their safety valve that they know if they throw it in the neighborhood will catch it, or they're a first read and they don't look down the field. I think that's what, if you look at the background of Dylan Raiola and you watch him in an offense, he actually has played in a couple of really good offenses. And remember, he had to learn 3 offenses pretty quick in the transition in the high schools that he's played at. He's played in some good offenses that have had some good skill talent, but he does a good job of surveying the field. Now, holding on the ball too long, they're going to fix, okay? Yeah. He's going to learn right away when he gets picked off and he can't use his big boy arm or he gets sacked or touched in the spring. He's going to have to adjust. Now, that's on him. But I think just the fact that you have a quarterback that's going to play quarterback will impact how we look at offense because we haven't had that. We've had athletes playing quarterback. Finally, Nebraska's got a quarterback playing quarterback. So let's see what that does to the offense where I'm telling you, I'm going to lose my mind if we go another year and 40% of the carries for Nebraska are by a quarterback. You might as well drop the program and hope that the Raiolas have good life insurance.
TF in the stream said Mark keeps putting down the O-line, but they are fine. Indecision by QBs is a killer. Not necessarily putting down the O-line. I'm just observing the fact that, look, last year when they had to run it in crunch time, they couldn't. Didn't happen, right? You weren't able to really salt away games. Pass protection improved tremendously over the year prior. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. So you expect them to take a step. I just get concerned where if the threat of the quarterback run game is gone, are you going to improve enough where you can just literally hand it off and salt away games? They haven't proven that they can. Yeah, they haven't proven that they can yet.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. All 3 of us talk about, can Nebraska get to a point that they can run the football when they want to run the football, not when they need to run the football? Because part of what you're saying, Mark, is last year it was a lot of 5-on-8. The numbers game were not good for Nebraska on the offensive line because there was no worry on the defensive side of the opposition that Nebraska was going to burn you with a pass play.
Great offensive lines. We got to go back to the pipeline. The last time a college offensive line could run and pick up 6 yards on first down, 5v8. All right. It's not normal. It's not normal that you're successful running the football, but guys, you're outnumbered.
But guys, it all falls in line here is if you have better quarterback decision-making, you have better coaching at the running back position where they're hitting the hole they're supposed to, and you've got offensive linemen that are doing their job. It's all about doing your job, and everybody's got to do their job, almost on point every snap. And if that happens, then it's supposed to work a certain way, unless you're just getting beat up front. It's just man on man and you're just getting beat up front. So if they can get better technique running backs, if they can get better decision-making quarterbacks, what does that do for the offensive line? Because we haven't really seen where if the offensive line is good, it trickles down in the current state of Nebraska football. In the past, we have, in great offensive lines, it affects everybody. But what happens if the back end, the quarterback and the running backs and the perimeter blocking and all that comes together? What does that do to how we think about the offensive line? That's a great unknown that we won't know until they turn on the scoreboard and we play football.
Sharpie, let's talk quarterback coach before we get you out. And I think we're all thinking along the lines that you're going to have kind of maybe a co-coordinator or for sure a position coach. You've touched on it a little bit here when we started this discussion. You've got the quarterback coach that's worked with Dylan, and that's Christensen. He's also Mahomes' private quarterback coach. So
I don't think that's an option, just to lay that out.
I know that. That was the name early as far as not necessarily quarterback coach, but that was a name that was kind of scanning the Nebraska football situation. Glenn Thomas, that's a familiar name with the Raiola party. I should say with Rule because of his stops, and he was pretty instrumental at Temple for his offense, and then Baylor, and then he's been at Pittsburgh this past season, Arizona State as their OC in 2022.
Boy, he's been at some messes of programs. My Lord,
He's in a mess. He's in a mess right now in the NFL.
Right, Arizona State and Pitt, no thanks.
Right. So my question to you is, what do you know from the football circles about Thomas, and do you like, despite his messy stops, what he's done from the little you know about him?
Well, I mean, there's the connection with Rule. The only guy on this staff that didn't have a connection to Rule was Tony White, and I mean, you could branch out and make a connection, but you know what I'm getting at. You probably have either worked with Rule or you've played with Rule or something along those lines. So you can connect the dots to Glenn Thomas. The NFL season will be over on January 8th. So it actually falls in line because Nebraska doesn't come back to school until 2 weeks later. Then you can get into the lab and start working with quarterback coaches. He's the name I hear more often. He's the name that makes sense, but he's not a name that comes in and he's OC as well. But here's what also, you make the connection. You think, man, this is just too good to be true. Is the past places that Rule has brought him onto staff, Satterfield has been there as well. So at least Satterfield has some familiarity with a Glenn Thomas, and Satterfield has moved a position when Glenn Thomas has been brought onto a staff.
Any trend there? Is tight ends one year, running backs another?
I thought it was very interesting at the end of the season press conference. Everything we've been talking about of Peets was going to be the quarterback coach. It didn't work out. Satterfield was going to be the tight end guy. So you don't have a quarterback coach. So you got to move Satterfield to quarterback. Rule publicly had never acknowledged that until the end of the year. And I thought, oh, yeah, now we got something cooking here. So Satterfield will still be the OC. Will it be a pass game, run game? That's been speculated. But I think what Nebraska also might be waiting for is an NCAA announcement on analysts and their role. Nebraska and many others in college football would love analysts to still have an on-field role, but not be one of your 10. And if that's the case, then maybe you see more than one change on the staff. But I think right now we're trending towards a new quarterback coach. And, Satterfield's still calling plays, but I'm not sure how that all work out. A month from now, I do believe Nebraska's staff on that side of the ball will look a little bit different. Because it might just not be quarterbacks and, moving Satterfield. It might be, I think you still got to look at running backs. I think running back was a poorly coached position last year.
Is Joe Daly in play? Is he a potential Carolina Panthers, obviously former Husker?
I don't know what the relationship is there. He was with Rule in Carolina. Here's what I know about Joe, and I know this from last year in talking to people, is Joe likes the NFL game. And I don't know, he likes his alma mater, but that might be tough bringing him back to Nebraska. But I know that I know that he likes the NFL game.
He had a tough go. Yeah. I wonder if he'd call him Matty R. I don't know if he'd do that.
Wow. Not Billy C.
Hey, can I give you one thing? I want to go back. I was going to mention this earlier. We were talking about the legacy and winning. As we're past Dylan Raiola saying yes, and it is refreshing to hear people that say, I want to be there. I think that's a big part of Nebraska's recruiting is Rule wants people that want to be here, whether they want to be a part of it, where they've always wanted to be a Husker, but they want to be at Nebraska. And that's what makes Nebraska a special place is there are enough guys that say, I'm only coming there because of the money. They say, no, I want to be there. Is the fact that his dad, who they let Dylan make his own decision. Nebraska did a really good job of recruiting Dylan. Yeah, there's uncle, there's dad, but they recruited Dylan. And I think that went a long way in how Rule was able to establish where Nebraska was in the pecking order earlier. You guys know he's a winner, and his dad was a winner, and his dad was super intense. I tell the story of when I was doing sidelines for the network, that 2000 game in Norman, when Nebraska goes up 14-0, game day's there, it's juiced up. Nebraska's up 14-0. The Oklahoma student section was right behind the Nebraska bench. And you know how close the fans are to the sidelines in Norman. Raiola walks over. I'm standing right by the edge of the Nebraska coaching box. Herb Street is standing next to me. Raiola stands on the field after Nebraska goes up 14-0, and he looks at the students and he goes, and people were calling him all kinds of names. And he was pointing at particular students and he was saying, you come down here on the field right now. So we know how intense Dom is. Okay. Yeah. He did something really cool during this process. He reached out to guys that have played here in the past, and he picked their brain on what's going on. He wanted to know, what's your feel? Don't lie to me. What's your feel on what's going on at Nebraska? And he got really good feedback, and he shared that with his son. But he shared with some of the big-name former Huskers that were before him, hey, I know you won when it was Frazier and Benning. Wouldn't it be cool if we won again with Raiola and Benning? Mm-hmm. I mean, he really leaned into the past, and this is where it starts again. And also, I thought it was ironic. In the name, image, likeness discussion, how about this being a small world, guys? The person that was front and center to discuss name, image, likeness with the Raiolas was his former college teammate, Matt Davison. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How interesting is that?
Yeah.
Full circle. Full circle.
Yeah.
Well, but you're alluding to something else about guys that want to be here, just in terms of loyalty, because Nebraska's had almost nation-leading attrition over the last God knows how long. But it looks like that might subside a little bit because of loyalty. And you look at Dominic, dude. He only played for Nebraska, and he only played for the Lions, right? Yeah. You talk about a guy that's just kind of instilled that mindset of just being loyal to who you're at. It's difficult to imagine Dylan wanting to transfer at some point, knock on wood. It's difficult to imagine a Javen Wright wanting to transfer or any of those legacy guys. So that does bode well for Nebraska. It just feels crazy to turn it over to a true freshman starting next year.
I know. You know, it all comes back to, guys, as we get through this, and the on the field stuff becomes the bottom line. I mean, Nebraska, they've done good things behind the scenes, and I think they're in a good spot. But now it's got to translate to playing football, okay? It just has. They've turned up the sense of urgency for 24, and that's great. But it has to equate to something. Is part of like the thing that I think is about to turn for Nebraska, and they're in a good spot, is they have an adult that's at the top.
Yeah, for sure.
We've gone around and around about Scott's tenure that didn't work out. They've got an adult at the top of the program that speaks like an adult and treats 18 to 22-year-old kids like adults. He talks to them like adults. He holds them accountable, and he also communicates with them where there's no gray area. we might poo-poo and say, man, 18 to 22-year-old kids these days, because, Schmidt's about to have somebody in that range. You might go, oh, man, they're not very smart. They're smart. And they just want to be told where they're at. And that's the thing that I keep hearing from players on this current roster is that Rule is a good guy who knows your name, knows your story, but he also lets you know where you're at. If you're not good enough, he's letting you know you got to be better, but this is how you can be better. Or, hey, this is where I see you in the program. This is where I see you next year. This is what we think of you. Those simple things go a long way. And that's stuff that they had to start from scratch, that now they've got that moving. Now let's work on the football stuff, because they're going to have a spring, which we are all excited about. And they're going to have a gigantic roster in spring, guys. I mean,
huge.
You got a lot of
get rid of like
enrollees.
15 guys.
Yeah, not yet, though. Let that play out. Let guys get rid of themselves.
Eventually.
But they've got an opportunity here in spring to start the scoreboard for UTEP, because essentially their entire roster is here in spring. You know what you have. You can start preparing for opening day when you begin in March. I mean, that's pretty cool. That's something that, you got to lean into of, it's go time now. It's not spring where we're teaching. It's springtime where we're just playing ball. And we haven't had that in a while.
How huge is Harburg this year, too? Just in terms of his approach, being team first or not team first. He's a guy that, like, if you look at him individually, probably would go, a position change, receiver, tight end, flex type of guy. But he's probably going to need to stay in that quarterback room.
Yes,
as an emergency,
absolutely.
Right? Unless you get a transfer at some point. He also strikes me potentially as a guy that maybe not okay with it, but would accept his role if he's not the starter, right? And would be helpful, would be a team first dude. He's a really important piece. He also has the respect of the team.
I think so. He's got to get, but he also would acknowledge that he's got to get better with what this offense intends to be.
Totally.
And not bellyache about, well, I'm getting passed over. Well, get better, right? I mean,
you're gonna need the guy this year, though. You're gonna need him at some point. Probably to take snaps.
And I like him.
Unless you bring in somebody else, you're going to need him at some point.
Don't you?
And I like him as I like him as a wildcat option.
Yeah,
honestly.
Something Mark you alluded to, that again has kind of been a theme of what we talked about this morning. Is a theme of Nebraska football is one of us. Mm-hmm. Isn't that what Harburg fits the role? One of us.
And athletically, he's a dude that can get some stuff done, right? And so that's what's interesting about him is I think if you had a deeper quarterback room, if you had a Tagovailoa type, I'm not saying it's him, but if you bring in somebody who can be that bridge guy, then you can afford to move Harburg around, right, and let him get the ball a little bit, because he's proven that, it's not a bad idea to have the ball in his hands in the open field with his size and all that. But unless you bring in a bridge guy, he's going to have to stay in that quarterback spot, and he's going to have to be kind of selfless.
Yeah, I think it's
probably not play a lot.
I think we've all speculated. I think it's disingenuous to Harburg to move him to tight end until that happens, because he views himself as a quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's a little too light for tight end. I would see him more as a receiver type, but either way, he's going to have to swallow some pride a little bit if you turn it over to Raiola and be ready to go as the backup quarterback when he could contribute in other ways.
I hope he doesn't.
Hope he doesn't what?
I hope that he now has a year of development and says, not so fast, my friends.
Look, he is a talented player. Like we know that his accuracy was just not necessarily good. We know that him seeing the field, not very good. But maybe this is the type of thing that pushes him, right?
Well, so I know we're running up against it here, like we always do.
God bless it.
Could you guys see, and I'll throw this out to all three of you. In 23, the coordinator on defense found a way to utilize each guy's strengths to be part of 11.
Yes.
And we didn't really see that on offense because it was so junky, and I shouldn't say junky, janky, because of all the injuries. Could that be possible in 24? that they find the strengths of individual guys and they're one of 11. So in 23, we got to see the defensive identity. In 24, what we saw on defense creeps into offense and how they look at guys, and using Harburg as an example of, okay, this is what you do best. So this is what you're going to be utilized for. And we're not going to make you do something you're not comfortable or exceptional at, but you're going to be part of the process. You're going to be part of the team. You know, it's just like one game, Bayor would play 40 snaps. Mm-hmm. The next week he'd play 8 and he wouldn't complain. And it made sense. It made sense. Previous staffs, we'd go, what the are you doing? It made sense. Maybe that's the case with guys like Harburg on this offense, that now we're going to face more competition in their particular position group.
Find his sweet spot, but also to the development phase, get him to be able to do some of those things way better and not give up on him, right? And let's talk real about his development between Whipple not wanting to associate with him to our friend Super Mario.
Can you believe you just said that? I don't think
I'm not done. It's worse because his motion got changed once he got here from Kearney. Super Mario started jacking with his motion and his mechanics. So the point is you can't don't make the kid worse once you get a hold of him. You don't screw him up.
But what you just alluded to, that I don't think enough fans even know. Like, he literally was not invited into the quarterback room under Whipple. Like, how dysfunctional was that It's just unbelievable.
Dysfunctional, but
that's
guys,
even true.
It is true.
But it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
right? It's just like, what?
It's coaching malpractice that should have been stopped by the higher ups.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
I mean, you could say, hey, son, you're never going to play for me. Sit in the back of the room. But not to allow them, I mean,
the quarterback room. That is so petty and ridiculous, right? So petty and ridiculous. But that's what they've been. That's what Nebraska's been dealing with for a little while.
But that goes back to Rule's strengths, and his strength of his staff is they're relationship people. Yeah. I mean, the one story I heard a lot in the offseason was Rule made guys learn each other's name. Yeah. Like he was told in one of the meetings, like when he first started to meet the team, is that guys didn't know like the other side of the ball. And that's not necessarily, I mean, you got so many guys in your program, but like defensive guys were saying, I know him as a number. And that like threw Rule off. He was like, whoa, guys, when they passed in the hallway of the football facility, they would just say, hey, they didn't know each other's name. So he made guys learn each other's names. Maybe you learn a thing or two about their background, but he just wanted people to learn their names. So it's about relationships and, just having communication. That's just like Nebraska football right now is like simple stuff that you should be doing, that they found a way to do. And now you hope all of that building up leads to success on the football field.
The other thing Nebraska will have going, and I know we got to get out, sorry. The other thing Nebraska will have going for it next year offensively, you think about the majority of the year, skill position-wise, you had Billy Kemp, very undersized receiver, Anthony Grant, who just, for whatever reason, didn't figure out football instincts or something. Those are the only skill position guys that you would consider as experienced, right? We act like Fedoni's super experienced. That was his first year on the field last year. Malachi Coleman, same deal. So you at least have that coming back next year, which could help. And that's part of why I think the offense was so bad. It's just nobody had experience on the entire offense. So they're all learning their way at the same time in a new offense. But Raiola will at least get the benefit of that. Malachi will know how to run routes. He'll be used to the speed of the game. Jalen Lloyd, same way. Fedoni, same way. If you get Ramir back, that would be huge as well. But Nebraska was really short on experience offensively, and it showed.
Sharpie, Merry Christmas, man. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas, guys. Yes.
Thanks for jumping on. Sharpie Claus.
Hey, I tell you guys this all the time. I enjoy this Saturday morning conversation. Sometimes I have gone now to not scheduling anything until 10 o'clock.
Well, I'll have it 10 o'clock.
Hey,
yeah.
I appreciate you guys and everybody else on Hail Varsity Radio. and our good friends at 1890, who Doug is going to hook us up. So
Good.
One of these mornings, we're going to drink Cornhead Lager on air.
That'll be awesome.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
the guys at Cross Strain, who do a great job and tied in with the 1890 collective. It's a great conversation. I always enjoy it. It's been a fun year. We're not done. It's actually, it's going to continue. It'll be a lot of fun. So I appreciate all three of you who are all very, very talented. So I enjoy working with you and the invite. And, we'll be back again to do it next Saturday.
We'll do it. I'll swing up you and Mark's way, and we'll watch some playoff football. How's that sound?
Let's do that.
You're not going to bring Elijah?
I'm down in Arizona. I'm taking my podcast mic with me, though, so I'll be all set for a Saturday morning spot at the Ass Crack at Dawn in Phoenix. So
hey, what's it up
we'll
with
FaceTime you in.
Hey, what's up with you two? You guys love Arizona. Every time I look, Schmidt or Elijah, you're either talking about going to Arizona or you're actually there.
Well, Joe Mama's got a place in Arizona that's on the golf course, so that's why.
And I have numerous friends down in Phoenix, so
it's
I'm not going to
warmer.
say no to free accommodations in warm weather.
Hey, we could be in Las Vegas getting ready for a bowl game tonight, or on the 26th in Phoenix.
Yeah.
I'd pick bowl game.
How did Nebraska not make a bowl game this year?
Oh my God! Can we go to 10:30? There are
Turnovers.
so many
turnovers.
Some of us, I would just like to add, have all their Christmas shopping yet to do on a Saturday, and do need to get out. So,
yeah.
I'm going to return my my wife's crap. So
Are you really?
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You mean the crap that she got you? You're going to return it?
No, that I got her.
Oh, okay. Why are you returning it? She just doesn't deserve presents this year, or?
No, I gotta switch them up.
Oh, I got you. Especially now that you learned about the pineapple situation.
No, I'm just.
Well, call Dr. Johns. Let him know you're coming.
No. No free shout outs, Mark.
See if you get invited to a hotel party.
I did not. I've just got to recalibrate what sizes I chose.
Ooh, that's not good.
Wow,
man! I think there's a reason why we need to call this one at some point, right?
A game called.
Honey, do not listen to the last couple of minutes.
Hey, Merry Christmas to all of you and all the great listeners and our fun we have on Saturdays.
All right,
straight up.
Appreciate
you, Gary.
How many? What are we? How many Saturdays before spring football? Before the spring game? 7 into 120. Are we 16 Saturdays from the spring game?
16 away. Yes.
Ooh.
That's going to be a sellout. Too bad for Raiola, by the way. They're going to knock the South Stadium to the ground while he's here. Huh.
Well, maybe he'll still be here when they build it back up.
Yeah,
hey, maybe.
And he'll be able to help with.
Hey, next week, let's talk about if he's going to wear 15, and if he's still wearing 15 against UTEP, will we be upset because he hasn't earned a single-digit number? Great topic for next Saturday.
Ooh,
489-1240. Dial in now.
And will he live up to Willie Miller's? Will he live up to Willie Miller's legacy?
No.
I think
it's number 15.
Bo Davis is the last quarterback to wear 15, I think.
Malachi is the last guy to wear it on the field.
Yeah, but there'll be some money.
Yeah, I like that. Sharpie, enjoy your holiday. We'll come see you next week.
Love you guys.
Elijah, appreciate you.
Thanks,
Love
Gary.
you guys. Kraynak, be good.
You as well, sir.
Get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. YouTube channel is Hail Varsity YouTube. Follow on Twitter
How about all the
H
listeners,
Varsity
too?
Radio. Yes, I was getting there last but not least. All of you that are in the stream that make an appointment about 7:45-ish with this transition to the digital year one. So appreciate you so much.
And as a note here, if you've made it through this full hour and 45 minutes of a weekend edition of Hail Varsity Radio, this is our last show officially on the books up until Wednesday, January 3rd. Schmidt and I taking some time off next week. So if you've made it to the end, just know we are going to be off the air next week. We are trying to make a show next Saturday happen while we're on vacation.
A week from Saturday.
A week from today. So we're trying to make that happen. But this is our last official show for about a week and a half. So if you're listening to this, we will talk to you again on Wednesday, January 3rd, and potentially Saturday, December 30th.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. It's do I got to get up Saturday next Saturday or not? We'll discuss off air.
We'll
talk about it.
Yeah,
we should take a vote. Do you guys want to? Are you going to listen?
Appreciate you much. Take care and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays with Hail Varsity and the weekend edition.